It's just a lack of urgency. And so there's this fire that is literally inside of me in everything that I do.
Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. My name is Tiffany. I am a school psychology intern this year, and today I have a super special guest with me. His name is Dr. Byron McClure, and I'm going to go ahead and let him introduce himself.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. I feel like I've made it, that I've arrived to be a guest on your platform. I am Byron McClure, school psychologist, father, parent, brother, husband, amateur social media guy. I'm many things. My current position, I am an assistant director of redesign. I've been lucky enough to be part of a team redesigning a high school in Southeast DC. I'm also the founder of Lessons for SEL, where I provide social emotional learning content. So that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. I know in the School Psych podcast episode that you were in recently, you were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I've made it, but I feel so honored to have you here.
Yeah, and I say that for like the School Psych podcast, of course, your platform. Like I watch these platforms and, see people invite different guests on and see, the voice that they have. And I'm just, one person just in my mind, this little guy. And so to get invited to be part of like the School Psych podcast, to get to talk at NASP, to, even I've watched your platform and you bring on people like Charles Barrett, and I'm just, lucky to be in the same conversation. And so it's also a way I think of just being grateful of the opportunities that present themselves. So I am a big fan of the work that you're doing.
Thank you. I know you've been doing amazing work in the field, but I wanted to start off by asking, how did you find the field of school psychology and what drew you to it?
Yeah, I found it by accident. I wasn't looking for it, wasn't searching for it. And so I did my undergrad work at Hampton University, which is a historically Black college and university in Virginia. And yes, we are the real HU. Shout out to the real HU. We have this rivalry with Howard University. But that's neither here nor there. After I graduated with my degree in psychology from Hampton, I went all the way out to West Texas. I don't know what I was thinking. I think I wanted to, get a different experience and learn from people who didn't look like me. And so I went all the way out to West Texas. And when I enrolled in my program at Abilene Christian University, I actually started out the clinical psychology track. My plan was to become a clinical psychologist, to work with, people, adolescents to late teens to, early adulthood and even adults. That was my focus. I thought I was going to become a clinical psychologist and be in private practice. And I had a class, and that first class, we had to look up the demographics, like pay rate, career opportunities in the field. And I'm in this class, and I'm realizing, based at the master's level, working at the clinical psych level, that they didn't make a lot of money. And then the demographic who I wanted to work with, which was, Black individuals, to help them heal and process, trauma and grief and all those sorts of things, and mental illness, that demographic at that time rarely sought out therapy and counseling. And so literally I'm leaving that class wrapped up, and I'm just in a place, I'm stuck. And I'm like, I came all the way out here to West Texas. I'm experiencing, something that's not like home. And I'm kind of like lost. Like I won't be able to do what I've dreamed of doing, and I've given up everything. And it was just this super overly dramatic moment to where I'm like sitting on the floor in the hallway. And as I'm sitting there on the floor, this lady literally comes out of nowhere. I think she came from the ceiling or something. And she just arrives right there in front of me. And she says, hey, are you okay? I think because I was the only Black guy just sitting on the floor. And she was like, what's happening here? But she was super cool, and she just started talking to me. I told her my dilemma, the problem that I was facing. And she said, you know that you can work with youth and prevent problems before they occur. And I sat up and I was like, that makes a lot of sense. Tell me more about this. She says that, you can work with Black youth. You can work to prevent problems before they occur. And you can actually get a job really easy if you work in a school. You can become a school psychologist. And I was like, I don't want to be a school counselor. And she just laughed. And I get it now because she's like, no, school psychologists aren't school counselors. It's an entire program. And in that moment, that was my introduction to the field of school psychology. She explained more to me about the field, about the job prospects, more importantly, the mission of school psychologists. And it just clicked. People talk about having a light bulb moment, like the light bulb literally went off. And that person, her name was Dr. Jennifer Shoemaker. At the time, she was the chair of the school psych department. And I made the switch. Me and a good friend, he's a really good friend now, Bob, we both switched from clinical psychology to school psychology, and the rest is history with me becoming a school psychologist. So yes, to answer your question, it's an accident. I literally fell into the field of school psychology, but it took that one person to expose the field to me, and I've been in the field ever since.
That's a crazy story.
Yeah, it really is, right? It's true. It was mind-blowing how it happened.
A lot of people find school psychology by accident.
Yeah.
And they kind of stumble upon it. And I think that's why awareness is so important. And so working in like social media platforms and just doing like awareness work is so important.
It's so important. And, for whatever reason, people don't consider, at least coming out of high school, coming out of undergrad, the field of school psychology. And so as many mechanisms and venues and avenues as possible to get word out, like we have to do it, which is why your platform to me is so powerful and transformative, because it's doing the work that, hasn't traditionally been done, or is doing it in a way to where it can organically reach masses of people. So yeah, your platform is crushing it with creating awareness about the field.
Thank you. I mean, I'm just grateful that I have a platform and people are actually watching videos and engaging with it. It's pretty amazing just talking to like high school and college students who are interested. I think even for me, I only knew about clinical psychology, and that's what I applied to right after graduating college. And then I found out about school psychology years later. So can you describe your typical day as a school psychologist?
Yeah, so my typical day, there is no typical day. I consider myself to be a non-traditional school psychologist. Of course, my role has, kind of evolved into, redesigning schools. But in the space of being a school psychologist, I would, wake up, drive, arrive to the building, and literally there might be a fight happening, and I'm pulling my kid, like it might be one of my boys, like, dude, what are you doing? Come on, come into my office. Crisis response right there. And then we move into a restorative conversation, collecting detailed information about what happened, the incident. Literally, I haven't taken my coat off, haven't dropped my bags or anything. Right there, engaging in restorative conversations. That might take up an hour, 2 hours. Get to speak with both students, have these restorative conversations, then bring the students together, have that restorative space, that restorative circle, come up with an agreement, follow up with deans, administrators to make sure everyone's on the same page. Then I tried to start walking up to my office while we were in person. As I'm walking up to my office, I might get stopped, do what's the technical term, consultation with teachers about, some student needs. They might ask me to come visit their classroom. I might pop into the classroom, so support students who are there, whether it's, just basic response, support with work, checking in with any of my students. And then I'll actually leave there, go to my office, take my coat off, right? By that time, it's probably like 11 o'clock. I'll literally take my coat off, take my laptop out. Some students might come in, like, Dr. McClure, what you doing? Trying to get settled. And then they might say, did you hear what happened? And then, we'll have a conversation, talk about what happened, troubleshoot, brainstorm. By that time, all right, y'all got to go to class. I have to test this kid, so I'm getting my tests and stuff ready. And then something else might come up, and so I'll respond to that. So it's literally like no rhyme or reason to the day. I try to keep an agenda to follow that agenda, but things happen, things come up. After that, I'll try, let's say I'm able to get some testing in, right? I'll knock out some testing. That isn't a large part of my day. I'll shift to, providing some groups, I collaborate with a lot of outside partners. For example, one partner is the Men of Strength Club, and we have where we have circles for some of our young men, and then we'll have a group during lunch, have that group engage in different conversations, anything around, gun violence to, police brutality, towards, what's the best movie? Is it The Wire or Breaking Bad? I don't know, any conversations. I'm just giving our boys a safe space. After lunch is over, I might go back into some classrooms. I might, try to read some reports, proofread some reports, tapping into different meetings. It could be a SEL team meeting. It could be an MTSS meeting. And then, have some more students pop into my office, discuss different things that might be going on. It's really no traditional day. And then the next day could be completely different. It could be quiet. It could be me just, seeing what's the latest research out there, reading up, writing reports, honing in on, a program that I'm, trying to test a pilot. For example, like I would they were called brotherhood, sisterhood assemblies. And so I might spend a lot of that day collaborating with our team around these brotherhood, sisterhood assemblies, making sure that the key speaker is ready for the brotherhood assembly, making sure the speaker is ready for the sisterhood assembly, and then launching that event. I might go to the auditorium, get on the mic, hype the kids up for a little bit, introduce the speaker, then go to lunch, and then go back to my office. I don't know, every day is different. I think the best way to say it is I pride myself on being a non-traditional psychologist. And I think to kind of summarize all that, we have so many unique skill sets, from consultation to data management, progress monitoring, to collaboration, to tapping into social emotional learning and restorative practices. And we can bring all these unique skills to the table inside of our schools to create magic, to make change happen. And so that's what I try to do, and what I pride myself on doing as a school psychologist in my work. I refuse to just be that psychologist who just stays inside my office all day long. And then you poke your head out and they're like, who are you? What do you do? You're the school counselor. I got it. No. Get out, make yourself known, be involved, be active, and utilize your repertoire that makes school psychs so amazing.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think this job is really what you make of it. And I think what you did right now was list every single role and function of a school psychologist within one typical day.
Yeah, it's true. And that's why I have so much fun in the work that I do, because we can do all of these different things. And the reality is a lot of people don't really know what it is that school psychologists can do. Like, there's this ambiguity around our roles and what it is that we can do. And so at your school sites, you can make that role stand out and unique to meet the needs of your kids. And that's something that I really enjoy doing. When I talk to graduate students or to early career practitioners, and they'll ask, what some of my advice is, I always say, you have to get out and make a name for yourself. You can't sit back and wait people to dictate what your role should be. Because if you do that, they're going to say, I need you to test, and that's it, and lock you into assessments, and that's it. And so whenever I start at a new school site or in a new position as a school psychologist, I always will just create this simple one-pager of everything that I do: consultation, groups, counseling, therapy, boys groups, all of those things. And then I would send it out in an email, and then I would post it on my door. And in that, I would always say, hi, introduce myself. These are all the things that I'm able to do. And then people say, oh, hey, here's this new psychologist. This is what they're able to do. And they'll take you up on that. And one of the best ways is giving an action item along with that. And my action item in that one pager is, I want to work with tier 2, tier 3 students. So send me a name of all the students who you have difficulties or troubles or who are struggling, who might be good for a social skills group. And they'll give you those names because they want something to do with those students. And then I'll create a list of all those students and I'll funnel them into groups, and then we'll have our social skills groups or our SEL groups. But that's a great way to make yourself known about the skills that you bring to the table. And that's just an easy strategy that I think everybody should be doing if they're not already doing it.
I love the idea of emailing all the staff and just letting them know what you can do.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I would do that as a first-year psychologist, but after kind of...
Why not? Why wouldn't you? Why not? Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it.
I feel like I'm still learning the job, and I'm not quite yet like confident in every single thing that I'm supposed to be doing, or like every role or function. And a lot of psychologists I've talked to, they said they finally felt comfortable after 3 years of working. And I think it's pretty insane that they say that, but maybe it's because we have so many roles and functions, or I'm not really sure why that quite is the case.
Yeah, and I mean that, unfortunately, that is the reality, and that takes a lot of time. 3 years, so much changes within months within this education space. So
True.
3 years, that's a eternity, and I told you earlier, I have an identical twin. My identical twin is much more reserved than me. He is very calm. He is very calculated and precise. And me, I'm just like, I need to go. Like, I just want, what's the task? What's the mission? And let me jump. Everyone isn't like that. You have to have balance, right? And I think just from my personal experience, locking in and tapping, and this is where my platform comes with this strength-based approach, tapping into your strengths, identifying those 1 to 2 things that you do well, and maximizing your strengths and your ability. For me, I knew it was counseling, it was social skills, it was SEL. So I tapped into that. And that's why that was my action item. This is what I can do, and this is what I do very well. All the other stuff, I can do it. It's part of the job, but I'm not the best at it. Assessments and all of that stuff, I can do it. I'm not the best at it. Like data and all of that stuff, I can do it. I'm not the best at it. But what I am really good, at least in my mind at, is building relationships, connecting with young people, and give me the most challenging students. And I want to work with those students. So I focus on that one aspect, working with the most challenging students. And that's my recommendation. Even for you, Tiffany, identifying what is the one thing that you say as a school psychologist, I'm going to be good at this one thing. And once you discover what that one thing is, go for it. Like, you don't have to wait 3 or 4 years. And another thing with that, we're waiting 3 to 4 years and 5 years to tap into our strengths. Our students don't have that luxury of waiting. Our students don't have the luxury of us holding back our gifts, our talents, our strengths of why we got into this work in the first place. And if we are holding that back, we are doing a disservice to our students. And so, Tiffany, like, you are like, you have so many skills and talents and strengths and abilities, and you're just like a super cool person. Like, tap into that with the students. And like, we just, taking a step back, like, yes, this work can be daunting. It can be overwhelming, especially for new practitioners going into the field. So don't feel that you have to tackle the world and solve all of the problems at once. Start small. Start with one thing that you can do well, that you can find success in. And once you can find success, continue building on top of that. So
I love that you're using the strength-based approach for psychologists and practitioners. I know you talk a lot about it like for students, but I think that's a really, really good approach, especially for early career psychologists and interns, because I feel like in grad school, they teach you, you have to be like agents of change, like social justice, and do all this great work. Make sure you're doing testing and counseling and all these different things. And I think it is really, really daunting. And schools have a lot of expectations. And so I think that's a great action point for us to really hone in on like the 1 or 2 skills that we feel confident in and that we have, and to work on that first.
Yeah, I just think it's important. And I'm a huge proponent of the Clifton Strength Finders assessment. Students can take it, adults take it. Part of the program that I'm responsible for now with this redesign work is the Dream Team. And with that, we're utilizing this strength-based approach. And so my plan is for all ninth grade students to take this Strength Finder assessment, on which we started that process. But before we got to students, my focus was every dream team. We have 23 dream team captains that I'm responsible for, is ensuring that every single captain who works with me took a Strength Finder assessment in addition to myself. And with the Strength Finder assessment, you're tapping into your top 5 strengths. And I did that because my whole focus is shifting from what's wrong to what's strong. And before we can help students shift from what's wrong to what's strong, we have to do that for ourselves. And what better way to shifting your mindsets and from what's wrong to what's strong than identifying what your top 5 strengths are? And then, Tiffany, once you can identify what your top 5 strengths are, it gives you this really cool printout, and it explains everything. And then saying, wow, like, this is a cool strength for me. Like, I'm going to tap into this. For example, one of my top 5 strengths is maximizer, and finding ways to maximize the true potential in every single person who I work with. So in my day-to-day work, I am literally tapping into how can I maximize this person. That's empowering people, right? To get results, to move, to make actual change. And I'm doing that with staff who I work with, as well as with students who I work with. Another one of my top 5 strengths is achiever, right? And so how can I had like these strengths are like really cool, but achiever, I'm also, and my third one is like competition. And so I'm always competing, like even with my identical twin brother, like we're always competing. And I want to win. I don't know if you can see that, but I want to be the best in everything that I do. But the thing here is I'm able to tap into my strengths because that's who I am. These are things that I'm bringing to the table, how I might support staff and how I might be able to support students. And then what happens, Tiffany, when you can tap into your strengths, you can experience this concept, which is called flow, right? Which is like Michael Jordan when he's playing basketball and you lose track of time and like everything is just moving in slow motion. It's the concept of just being in the zone. And imagine if you are in this job, right? But it doesn't feel like a job because you're utilizing your strengths and everything is coming easy to you. And then we can teach our students how to tap into that flow, how to experience, how to leverage their strengths to bring about change and to be successful. So that can be for students, that can be for educators, that can be for us as school psychologists, which is why I'm imploring school psychs to tap into the unlimited potential and understand your actual strengths so we can move from what's wrong to what's strong.
I love that. Thank you for sharing all of that. I hope the listeners, whoever they are, whether they're high school students, they're interns or practitioners, or maybe, I don't know, there's random people watching. They can always use this approach. And I think it would be very helpful for them. What do you think is the most rewarding and most challenging part of the job as a school psychologist?
Yeah, so I'll start with the most challenging thing, and we've kind of hit on some of those challenges. It's, really actualizing our skill set. We have all of these skills that we learn coming out of graduate school, entering into the field, but it's how do we actually put them into practice? Like, how do we move from the research and what the research says into, actual practice day to day? How do I move out of a space where I have to test? Like, that's just part of the job. How do I actually tap into my strengths? Like, that sounds great in theory, but how can I actually do that when the expectation of the job or the role is to just test and place? How can I be a good psychologist when people don't even know what a psychologist is? When I'm constantly confused with being the school counselor, this lack of awareness around what it is that I do. The challenges are broad, but narrowing those down even more. Competency levels for school psychologists, right? Like, how do I utilize my skills in a space that is ever changing, ever evolving to meet the needs of diverse learners? That's a difficult thing. So making sure that you're staying up to date with the latest trends and professional developments. Challenges are working with staff who might have very fixed mindsets and rigid ways of doing things. How do you operate when, for example, like your focus is to bring about, equity, but you're in a place that doesn't care much about equity or racial justice or these things? How can you, as a school psychologist, tap into making disproportionality and disproportionate outcomes balance when people don't even care to utilize the tools that are out there that are available? There are so many challenges as a school psychologist. But then when you stay persistent and you keep working and you keep plugging away, and then you can actually start seeing a difference that you're making in the life of a child, that's where the reward comes. And it might not be right there in that moment. It might not be that school year. It could be years down the road. Here's a real life scenario, something that just happened. I worked with a student when I was at Anacostia. He and just some background context. When I first started at my school, they said that no ninth grade boy promotes to the next grade. And I was like, oh, like they're not graduating? Like I've heard, poor graduation rates, all that. They said, no, Dr. McClure, you're not hearing me. None of the ninth grade ED boys are promoting to the ninth grade, meaning that they're dropping out of school. And so I came, set up programs, check in, check out, all of that good stuff. But one of those boys with ED, he came back in after being gone for a while. And he came in and he was a 10th grader. And I looked at his schedule and he was in one of the higher math classes. I was like, all right, they label him as ED, but like he's in this class, like he must have some skills. And so I went back and looked through his report and his scores were like really good. And I was like, but he's failing everything. Something's not adding up. And so I decided to update this kid's psychological evaluation because it just wasn't adding up. And after evaluating him, utilizing this strength-based approach, this kid had one of the highest IQ scores that I've ever seen. And so we were able to tap into the strengths of this kid, put a good plan in action for him to put him on a path towards success. And then, like what happened, ups and downs, different things happened. This kid ended up transferring out of the district, actually to PG County where I grew up, to my high school. And I get a call Wednesday at like 9 o'clock at night. And it's like, Dr. McClure, what's up? And I was like, is this such and such? And it was like, yeah. And I was like, oh man. And we're talking. It's like, Dr. McClure, I graduated. And I'm like, man, what? He said, I just wanted to, I'm going through my numbers and I just wanted to call and say thank you. Like all the work, just pouring into me constantly, it meant a lot. And, this is years after the fact. I had, honestly moved on to the other students, other kids, other initiatives. And he wasn't at the top of my mind. But at that moment, that's the reward right there. The work of pouring into this student, working with his family, helping him to shift from what's wrong to what's strong, and seeing his strengths and how to tap into it and how to utilize it. And he took those skills with him. I didn't see it in the moment. Even when he left, I was like, this could be a student that we didn't reach. But this student ended up graduating. And those are the rewards when, especially at the high school. I like working at the high school because kids can come back. They'll say, thank you. And if it wasn't for you, like, I don't know where I would be. So that's the reward. Just being able to see students find success. And we can't define success for them. Mm-hmm. They have to be able to say, this is success for me. And how can you help me to reach this level of success? And to me, that's the true reward. And I think that's the best reward more than anything that I've experienced as a school psych. So
I think that's why a lot of people are in the field, to support students, help them succeed, and sometimes even change their trajectory. But it sounds like the big challenge is maybe like systems level work or changing people's perspectives, and just like they're like big things that impact a lot of students.
Yeah, I mean that's a beast. I mean, being able to change an entire system, being able to work with one student is one thing, but being able to positively influence an entire system, that has historically generated certain outcomes
Right.
for marginalized groups of students and even certain groups of students. How can we as school psychologists influence that level of change? And that's where you can tap into frustration, even for myself, when change doesn't move fast enough or swiftly enough, or where you see this is the solution and you're screaming, this is what needs to happen. This is what we can do. This could be a solution to move us from point A to point B and get us there. But because of the system, and when we say the system, I'm referring to policies and practices and ideas that have been historically put in place to marginalize certain people. And even in certain conditions, right? Where I'm redesigning a school, like that is a very condition that has been created by a number of systems. And for me to genuinely be able to create any type of change or to influence any type of change inside of that space where I am redesigning, we can't only do that inside of that school system. We must move our work outside of that system into the larger community, considering the context, considering things such as racial segregation and racial discrimination and housing policies and poverty and all of those things that have created that very condition where that school sits in. There's an analogy that I just saw. If there's a fish that's sick, that's out of the pond, you might look at that fish and say, hey, there's something going on with this fish. But if you continue walking and you see a whole bunch of fish out of the water sick, you're going to be like, hey, something's going on here. And then if you drive a little bit more and you see 5 lakes and 5 ponds and all of the fish are out of that lake, out of that pond and belly up and sick, you're going to start asking some questions like, there's something going on with that lake. It's not that one fish, it's the lake. And that's in the space of education, right? It's not, and we can't look at the students and say, I know I'm going off here, but look, we can't look at the students and say, that fish or that student has something going on. There's something wrong with him. We need to fix him. No, that's why we have, as educators, we've been in the space of failing and getting it wrong for so long. We must be able to look at the entire lake, the entire education system to see what that systemic issue is, what that condition is, so that we can rectify it, so that we can create conditions where the fish, where the students can thrive and be successful and, do what they want to do and be successful in life and make change happen. So, yeah, but that's tough. Like, how can we fix lakes? That's a difficult thing. It's a challenging thing.
What's
it's
the action point here?
Yeah, it's tough. And so my action point has been, again, because this is where you can get overwhelmed, where you can get like, wow, I have to tackle the world. And that's not the reality. You have to focus, again, tapping into your strengths and identifying what you can influence, what you have control over. And for me, that was tapping into my strengths as a school psychologist, understanding things such as data, progress monitoring, and those things. For example, I have a shirt that says in the school to prison pipeline, right? And so tapping into understanding of risk ratios and risk indices so that I can better understand where disproportionality is happening in suspensions and office discipline referrals and expulsions, and understanding that with Black students, the risk ratio might be here. With white students, the risk ratio might be here. And if it's disproportionate, we have a problem. But understanding through the data and then reporting back to the school teams, these are the trends that we see in our office discipline referrals. And now we can start, since we see that discipline referrals are at their highest at 12 o'clock, right after lunch, during fourth period. Now we can build in interventions. We're tapping into mindfulness during this time, and so that students are coming in more settled. That's how we start becoming change makers and influencing change. Will it happen overnight? No, absolutely not. Will it happen in a year or two? Maybe, maybe not. But we have to be diligent and continue speaking on these issues and utilizing the tools and resources and strategies that are out there so that we can continue moving the needle and fighting for change in a productive way.
Yeah, I love how you mentioned data-based decision making. Using data, I know school psychologists love data to kind of just start talking about that change. And for me, I think having allies on your side is so helpful in kind of talking about this kind of stuff, like in your schools, in your school systems, just having a couple other people on your side.
Yeah, I think that's a very important thing. And one, again, starting small, you don't have to start by fixing all 5 lakes at once. No, you can start by saying, I have a plan, I have an idea. Who might support me in this plan? Who aligns with my thinking that we need to improve disproportionality? Or who aligns with my thinking that we need to create a safe space for LGBTQ students? And finding allies in your work. It might be the 3rd grade teacher down the hall. It might be the art teacher. But finding allies in the work so that you don't have to take on this work all alone.
Yeah, 100%. So what is your current role right now? So I really wanted to ask you this because a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, like what if I don't like this job? Like I'm studying this one thing, I'm putting so much time, effort, and money into like this degree, or there are a lot of psychologists that get burnt out. And so what do you do right now?
Yeah, that's a good question. So 2 things on the side, but it's really evolving into like, no, this is going to be a full-time thing. I'm the founder of Lessons for SEL, but my day-to-day job on paper, I am the assistant director of redesign, where I've had the luxury to be part of a team redesigning a high school in Southeast DC.
I'm sure that entails like a lot of different things, and we don't have to go into it because we've already been going for so long.
I know. My bad.
People can reach out to you, and I'm sure, they can ask you questions.
Yeah, definitely reach out to me. It's a really cool endeavor. Basically, I found a way to tap into my skills as a school psychologist. People took recognition of that, and I transferred those skills from being a school psychologist into redesigning a high school. Yes, school psychologists, we have skills that will allow us to redesign a school. So I've been able to tap into that, and we all can.
What is the role of a school psychologist regarding social justice in schools?
Whew. Yeah, that's a tough one. Simply put, in my humble perspective, is acknowledging where disproportionality is showing up and then moving towards action to create more equitable outcomes for our students.
That's it?
Yeah, I wanted to keep it short.
Thank you. I think we already talked a lot about it, like throughout the video, like throughout like every question. It was kind of brought up just like from your experiences and like the challenges that we face as school psychologists in schools.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the social justice, and really for me it's racial justice and even economic justice that I'm striving towards, is essential in the role of school psychology. And it can it can take a number of different forms, from equity within discipline practices, which has been one of my primary focuses. And as an example of that, that might look like a group of students being disciplined more harshly in comparison to another group of students. And where that justice comes in is making sure that we have practices that are equitable and just for all groups of students. Another example could be in special education referrals. And I talk in terms of disproportionality a lot. But when you boil down to it, to me, when you're talking about disproportionality, straight up, you're talking about racism, right? And structures and systems that have created conditions where disproportionality can thrive, which is systemic and structural racism, right? But in special education, you're looking at either overrepresentation or even underrepresentation. Now, people don't talk about the underrepresentation part a lot as well. But as an example, with my ED boys, you can walk into any of those classrooms, you'll see an overrepresentation of Black boys identified as having emotional disabilities. If you go into an AP or honors class, you will see Black boys underrepresented in those spaces, which to me is another issue of injustice. And so as school psychologists, we should constantly be noticing and reflecting on our practices, examining those conditions which are leading to these rates of disproportionality, and then utilizing our skills as school psychologists to actively disrupt those inequitable practices to create more equitable outcomes for our students, which leads to liberation.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff. And now that you said the word disrupt, I have to ask about NASP. Recently you presented at NASP and it was virtual. And so I think a lot more people were able to attend, and I think you fired everyone up. Yeah. And I think you went from like an influencer to a celebrity. So tell me about your experience.
Yeah, I really think at the core, as you can see from this interview, I just get passionate when I talk. And I think because I have my students, like this student who I referenced, who had transitioned and just called me and told me, that he had graduated. I have those students in mind, and the struggles, like I can see it. I'm walking hand in hand with those students, and I see those struggles. But then when I step into these other arenas, people are moving at a snail's pace, moving towards equity and justice. And for me, our students don't have that luxury. Our students don't have a chance to say that, hey, you can take 4 or 5 years to begin producing equitable outcomes. No, like our students don't have that much time. Like this needs to happen now. And so when I speak, it's from a place of we have to start taking action now. Like change has to happen now. We need social justice and equity now. Like we need to disrupt these oppressive systems now. And it's a sense of urgency that's coming from me. Mm-hmm. And I see the conditions, and I see, our political climate. I see our educational climate. It's just a lack of urgency. And so there's this fire that is literally inside of me and everything that I do. Again, it's going back to my strengths. Like I'm a maximizer, I'm an achiever, I'm a competitor. And like I need this to happen for my people. And I'm gonna do everything in my power, whether that's banging on the table, whether that's stopping a cop from arresting a kid inside my building by telling them, no, you can't do that here. Whatever it takes, like I'm going to do it. And do I get it wrong sometimes? Yeah, absolutely. I make poor decisions a lot. I was that kid. I have my identical twin who helps balance me out all the time. But I'm constantly going to speak my mind and say what I think needs to happen, because our kids need that voice. They need the advocacy. And that's what I got into this field for. Like I made that switch from clinical psych to school psych because I wanted to make a difference. And I saw that I could make a difference in this space. So everything I'm doing is to make a difference and to, be the change that I want to see. And so when I speak, like that's what's coming through. And I want to just implore people, like find whatever it is that lights a fire up under you, the way how I found these issues to light a fire up under me. And if we all can like tap into that ability that we all have, it's within all of us. Like, man, just to imagine the mountains that we could move together. So yeah, that's kind of my thing. So
I think people really felt your fire. I'm not sure if you were able to like look at the comments and like what was going on.
I couldn't see.
But I listened to like the first maybe like 20 minutes, and then I had to go home because my school was closing down because it was getting later in the evening. And so I had you playing in my car while I was driving home in traffic. But people were fired up. People are still talking about it. And I think like it was so great that so many people got to sit in your presentation and hear you. That's
cool. And like the funny thing is, I'm like that all the time. And so people might say like, is he hype like that? I was trying to be like calm and reserved because I knew it was going to be, a good amount of people. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like normally, like in my day-to-day work, like I'm on fire all the time. And again, it's important to me. It's important to the students who I work with. And so I'm just trying to use my voice. I'm trying to use my platform to do good. So
Yeah, the field is so lucky to have you. So this is the time I'm going to plug everything in. He has a website. It's called Lessons for SEL, right?
Yes, that's
So
correct.
I'll leave everything in the description box below and also somewhere on the screen here, and also all of his socials. He's also on TikTok. You should follow him there.
I'm on TikTok. My TikTok is I am School Psych Life. Yeah.
Definitely give him a follow. I am also ashamed to share that I have a TikTok as well. I don't really promote that out there, but I've been making a lot more school psych content. If you have any questions, comments, please leave it down below. We would love to engage with you. And yeah, thank you so much for being here, Byron.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me and inviting me onto your platform. You are crushing it. I'm excited to follow your path and your journey.
All right, we'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.